about case study 1. We'll give you about 10 minutes to talk about case study 1, and then we'll do case study 2, and then we'll do case study 3. So let's get to it. Case study 1 is first. I'll come and sit down with you. Okay. Sarah, what can you tell us about case study 1?
Well, I'll read what you guys have in front of you. It's a single male adult who has custody of his young daughter. He has frequent run-ins with law enforcement. He's a regular abuser of illegal narcotics, including crystal meth. His education stops at a GED. He's unemployed and has limited skills. No stable housing, and is couch surfing. Applies for subsidy, receives it, and moves into subsidized housing. Other things that you should know about this young man is that we're often, cut from the same cloth as our parents. So where we look at his situation and we think, wow, a parent using drugs, breaking the law, no real housing, that's kind of the world he grew up in. He didn't know any different. He didn't have the skills to ask the different questions or navigate a better life for himself.
Okay. So does he have an actual criminal record?
Yes.
And is he living in rent-subsidized housing now?
No.
Okay. So he applied for and received it, but he's not in it at this moment in time.
Right.
Okay. Is that because he chose not to take it, or?
No, he's moved on.
No. I mean, at the time of this story.
Oh, at the time of the story, yes, he was. He battled with homelessness, and his battle started, or his journey started, as a 16-year-old homeless boy. And so, as he moved through his life and made decisions, it was a roller coaster ride. And yes, when he started his move towards self-sufficiency, it began by getting stable housing for him and his daughter.
At the point we're talking about in this case study, he just moved into rent-subsidized housing,
Yes.
let's say.
Okay, yeah.
Previous work history that you know of?
Not up until he got stabilized housing. Before that, it's a common factor that if you use drugs and you become addicted to drugs, the best way to get more drugs is to sell drugs.
Okay. And at the time that we're talking about, when he moved into rent-subsidized housing with his daughter, how old was his daughter? Do you know? More or less?
I'm counting backwards because I know how old she is now. She was probably 7, maybe 5 to 6 to 7.
Okay. Does anyone have a burning question you want answered before we ask you to start talking about this? Yes. I'll get it. What about the mother? So where's the mother?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes you end up like 2 peas in a pod. So mom was going down the same track.
Okay. Any other just burning factual questions before we ask you to talk about this? Yes, Beth.
Has he been engaged in any recovery program or
Is he in any recovery programs?
Yes.
Okay, for his drug addiction
Mm-hmm.
at this time.
At this time.
Yeah.
At the time that he was homeless and moving into subsidized housing, yes.
Elliot?
Part of that, was he responding to those?
Yes.
I'll take one more question.
My question was, you mentioned that at 16 is when his homeless journey began. What was his home life like before age 16?
Couch surfing was his life for the majority of it.
All right, so I'm gonna let us start talking at our tables. I can't give you all the information, so you'll have to fill in the gaps at your tables and do your best with this. The questions for you to answer are really pretty straightforward. First, just at your table, how does this make you feel? What do you think about this situation? Second, what do you think this person should do to become a healthy and stable member of our society? Talk about the services you know of at your table that this person could take advantage of to try to improve their life and become a healthy member of our society. And 3, and we're going to ask you all to answer this question by raising your hands. And this is a very pointed, difficult question, but it's to make the point that people in poverty or living near poverty have to make very difficult decisions. Let's assume that there is a brother who lives in Wisconsin in a stable family who does not really know the daughter and has not been a part of her life. Should the person in our case study give up custody of his daughter to go live with his brother or not? So that's your question. You have about 10 minutes to talk about that, and when we come back together, I'm just going to ask you all to raise your hands on your answer to that last question. Okay, everyone, I'm sorry to interrupt your conversations, but I want to keep us moving along, so if you could just wrap up, we'll move to the next case study. I'll just give you a few seconds. It sounded like you were having some interesting conversations there. We gave you a little longer to talk about that one since all 3 case studies have some similar issues you'll be talking about each time. So we're going to move on to case study 2, but before we do that, I'd just like to see a show of hands. I'm going to ask you if you personally feel that he should have given up custody of his daughter or not. So if you feel that in that situation he should have given up custody of his daughter, raise your hand. Well, to the brother. To the brother, the fictional brother that I mentioned. I see, I don't know, maybe 10 hands in the air and some people saying temporarily. I hear a lot of temporarily coming from that side of the room. So who would hold up their hand for no, he should keep custody of his daughter in this situation? Vast majority of the room. With all these questions, there's not a right or wrong answer, I don't think. It's just a tough question. So case study 2. Sarah, what can you tell us about that?
Okay, so we have a single adult male with a teenage son. He's a disabled veteran, addicted to pain medication and methadone, formerly a truck driver but lacking his CDL, and if I didn't mention, he's unemployed. Thanks. And homeless, forced due to the sale of his unit.
Anything else you want to add?
One of the significant differences between case study number 1 and number 2 is that case study number 2 was not raised in homelessness, had access to education and a good family life, and so his family life changed as an adult, and the decisions that he made were not indicative of how he was raised.
What is the disability that he's suffering from?
That I don't know.
Okay. I mean, do you know if it was a physical disability, a mental disability?
Yeah, so the pain medication was due to a physical disability that he endured while he was serving in the Army, and then coupled with diagnosed depression.
Okay. Do you know if, and again, this is all at the time of this case study,
Mm-hmm.
do you know if he had any income at all?
No, he did not.
Wasn't on any sort of welfare or anything? No income at all?
No, 0 income.
Do you know the age of the teenage son?
16.
16. You mentioned the biggest difference between the first case study and this case study. Are there any other differences you want to point out that you think might help the conversation?
Well, the first case study, being raised in poverty, probably had an idea of what was out there, possible resources, just even accessing the food bank, or, even the wherewithal to apply for subsidized housing. Case study 2 kind of just spiraled. When he got out of the Army, and he couldn't find a job, and when you become a disabled vet, you still have to go through the process of navigating a system. And I think the overwhelming barriers that he had, coupled with the depression and using pain medication, and then, and for those of you who don't know, that methadone is actually a synthetic form of heroin, so he was originally a heroin addict and then switched to methadone, trying to get off of that is just devastating in and of itself. So I hate to use the the phrase kind of head in the sand, just didn't know how to navigate the system. He didn't know how to change his choices and just kind of became a victim of his own circumstance by not asking the right questions and kind of caving into those barriers until he ended up at the bottom of the valley waiting for the ambulance.
So before I release you to talk at your tables, does anyone have a burning question, factual question? Yeah.
Is he
Uh,
eligible for veterans benefits?
Can you say that a little louder?
Is he eligible for veterans benefits?
Is he eligible for veterans
Discharged
benefits?
such that he
Yeah,
can
was he
be-
honorably or dishonorably?
I don't know about whether he was honorably or dishonorably discharged. I do know that, and at this current situation, he was not eligible for his VA benefits.
Stick a hand in the back there. Yep, you.
Is
Wait for the mic, please.
this person physically able to drive?
Yes,
I don't know if y'all heard that. I don't think the mic was on. Is he physically able to drive?
Does he have a current driver's license?
yeah, he had a driver's license, but no CDL driver's license.
Did he ever have one?
No.
Okay, I will take one more question.
Where's his mother?
Question is, where is his mother?
I don't know that one.
Do you mean the son's mother? The son's mother. Yeah, not his mother.
I was like, oh, I don't know.
Okay, so your questions for this one are the same. Just how does this make you feel to be in this type of situation? What types of services, if you were in this situation, would you try to make use of to make yourself a healthy and stable member of our society? And the specific kind of pointed question for you all to consider is, if someone came along and you were in this situation and gave you $1,000 to do with as you pleased, would you use that $1,000 to get your CDL license again so that you were employable, or would you use it to get an apartment for 2 months? Which one? All right, everybody, if you could wrap up your conversations, I'd appreciate it. We'd like to move on to the third and final case study. Okay, I'm going to ask you this same question. I'm going to ask for a show of hands again. In this case study, if you were in this position and someone just magically gave you $1,000, would you spend that on your employability, or would you spend it on secure housing for 2 months? So, if you would spend it on your license, please raise your hand. Interesting. It's about half the room, I'd say. If you spend it on the apartment, please raise your hand. That's more like a third, so I'd say a little more of the people in the room said on the license. Interesting. Case study 3. Monica, could you please explain that to us?
Yeah, case study number 3, she has a name, and her name is Jane. And a few years ago, she moved here from Georgia, and she was following a man, is what she told me. And she wound up in Everett with a job making $14 an hour. She had 4 children. She was an employment specialist. And she got stopped one day with a speeding ticket, and then the officer discovered she had some unpaid fines. Her license was suspended. She disclosed that to her employer, who gave her a couple of weeks to work it out. She wasn't able to work it out. She lost her job. And she was 2 months into a new lease, a 1-year lease. She wasn't able to make the rent. And within a matter of a month, she was homeless with a judgment against her for the vacation of that lease that she's still actually today paying off. She moved in with her niece into a 1-bedroom apartment with her 4 kids and her niece's 1-year-old child. That lasted about a month. Then she started couch surfing with some friends in Tacoma. And she said, I would never spend more than 1 week at any one place. But then she ran out of couches. And then she had enough child support to pay for, she was trying to get her kids in school, and she wasn't able to get them into their old school district, so she was the only school district she was able to get them in because of her address challenges, lack of one. was South Kitsap. So she was driving her kids 20 miles to school, and that's how her child support was used. She applied for TANF. She got on TANF, and then they started aggressively collecting the actual level of child support, which turned out to be higher than TANF. So she got to keep the higher level of child support, but then got off TANF, which meant she couldn't get their employment services anymore. And so she continued to couch surf, and she had enough money to pay 3 weeks a month at the Vista Motel in Port Orchard, and then she couch surfed the other month. And it got so bad making the rent that she ended up moving her and her 4 children into a neighbor's unit, a neighbor she didn't know, a strange man, who let her move in. And she said, I slept with one eye open, but it was better than sleeping in the car. She did take on 2 more stepkids in the process who were going to be facing CPS custody, and she told me, said, why did you do that? And she said, well, what the hell is 2 more? So with that, that's her story.
Thank you, Monica. Can you tell us the ages of the kids here, range?
Yeah, they were, at the time of her going into homelessness, I want to say they were ranging in age between 2nd and 8th grade. So 4 kids between, spread those grade levels.
And the kids all were couch surfing with her?
Yeah, they were all couch surfing with her. And because she moved here from Georgia, she absolutely had no family to fall back on.
Okay. Actually answered the rest of my questions.
Okay.
Are there any just quick factual questions you guys want answered? Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know what the acronym for TANF is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What is TANF?
Temporary aid for needy families. It's what many people used to know as welfare. It's gone by several different names, but in her case, she was collecting about, I want to say, $600 a month in TANF, maybe a little bit more.
Any others? Yeah.
So when she lost her TANF benefits, did she also lose medical care for the children?
Question was, when she lost her TANF benefits, did she also lose medical care for the children?
That didn't come up in my discussion with her last Friday, so I don't know.
All right, one more.
The 2 kids that she took on, is she getting any assistance for them?
Is she getting any assistance for those 2 additional children?
No, and she wasn't getting any assistance, and she only had them, I want to say, for a period of a couple of years. But, well, actually, I take that back. She did tell me that, and this happens later in the story, that she was able to get a higher level of TANF because of those 2 kids. I take that back. She did tell me that. But that took a while to get to that point.
Okay, so the question for you all, again, please just sink into this for a moment and think about what it would be like to be in this position. And I think this is a really great case study because she's someone like many of us who just suddenly fell into this. Think about what that would be like and what you can do to try to get yourself out of this. And the specific question that we'd like you all to answer is this. Again, it's the $1,000 magic question. If you receive $1,000, let's assume that it's winter. I know winters aren't that horrible here, but it still is cold here in winter. Her children didn't have warm clothing to go to school. They don't have the books and supplies they need for school. Are you going to spend your $1,000 on your children, getting them the clothing, the supplies they need for school, or are you going to spend it on 2 months of secure housing? Okay, everybody. You can wrap it up. We'd appreciate it. Since you guys are really having a hard time answering this question. So, once again, I'll finish this by asking you all to show with a raise of hands whether you would spend your $1,000 on clothes and supplies, school supplies for the children, or on secure housing for a couple of months. So, if you would spend the money on the children, please raise your hands. Nobody. Oh, we got one hand. We got one hand over here. Now, because some people might say, I'm not going to choose either one of those, I'll finish the question. Raise your hand if you would spend the money on housing.
In Georgia?
Yeah.
In Georgia.
In Georgia.
In Georgia? Right. That's true, okay. Buy a ticket to Georgia and a house in Georgia. Perfect. Okay. Well, I hope this exercise was interesting for you all. This is the moment in the day where we really wanted to kind of force you to think about what it feels like to be in poverty, as much as we can here in this room. At the end of the day, we're going to close this conference by telling you the actual real outcomes to these case studies. So that's how we'll close the day.